and creating a new object and instantiating it and displaying it. Is that all I do now?
I think it's 2 list views, 1 singleton instantiated.
Well, I know what you're supposed to do. I'm just wondering what I left you with. So right now I have I wrote the add credit card activity, and then we didn't do the add whatever. Yeah, because that's just a duplicate of it, right? So page 2 activity, this is reading some stuff in. Okay, so right now what I've given you, and I assume this is the same way. Right, and then I gave you just enough, so I showed you the singleton at the end. So on the submit button, we read in the stuff for the credit card information, create a new instance of a credit card, display it, proving it worked, and then we go ahead and throw it up to the singleton, right? So the singleton has it. And what am I showing right now on the main screen? So the main screen right now has a bunch of students that were created, but if I click, what is it? Next page takes me to the student entry. So if I do that, press create student, that goes into here. I'm telling the student to display itself, and that's this guy right here. So there's the student displaying itself. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, I mean, there really isn't a difference between doing this for one screen versus doing it for one list view versus 2 list views, or do you want me to show you both list views?
I'd like to see both list views.
Okay, so let me go ahead and then convert mine over to your world of, let me add the loyalty program screen real quick, just be a little duplicate of what we did last time, but it'll give us a uniform app. Sound good? All right, so on this screen I wanted to, well, let me just go back here. I'm going to get rid of press me and hello and this, and I'm just going to have the add credit card, then I'm going to have an add loyalty program. I'll go ahead and create that. So I will go here to my activity main XML. And I'm going to dump this press me button and dump hello and dump go to next page. We just won't be able to add a new whatever I called it. Student. Can't add a new student anymore. I'll go ahead and create a second button. This guy will be add loyalty program, like this. All right, and then I'm going to go into activity main, and I'll go ahead and give myself a thing for clicking. So here's my on add credit card button pressed. I'll just do kind of the same thing for add loyalty program button pressed. Now I am going to need a activity for that add. So I'll go ahead and say file, new activity. And this is stuff that you guys would have had for last week, right? I'm kind of finishing up last week's homework. So I'll add an empty activity. And we'll call this guy add loyalty program activity. And what did we decide a loyalty program is? A name, a bank.
Points or whatever the value you have, some numeric. Name, bank, balance.
All right, name, bank balance, easy one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and need to give myself a class for storing loyalty programs, just like I have a class for credit cards. So this is kind of reviewing the stuff. For those of you who kind of struggled with the assignments, pay close attention here because I'm effectively doing the second half of last week's assignment since we only did it for the first half last time. I'm going to go kind of quick to get caught up here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create an object to represent a loyalty program. So this has nothing to do with Android. This is just a plain Jane Java. Plain Jane Java class. And we'll call this guy a loyalty program. Oh, I already created that? I must have I started writing it last time. Actually, we wrote the whole thing last time. I just didn't give you the screen for it. So loyalty program has a name, has a bank, has a point balance. Oh yeah, this is where I was showing you the two different constructors. Yeah. So we have one constructor that takes in a string and takes in a name and a bank and then assumes the point balance is 0. And then we have a secondary constructor if you were interested in kind of putting in a loyalty program that we already had a point balance for. We can do that, then we display it. All right, so we already have this guy. So let me go back into here, just for the sake of cleaning this up. I'm gonna say close all up here. And I'm gonna open up main activity and activity main for right now. Let's get these guys hooked up. So I want this add loyalty program button to call my add on loyalty program button pressed function. It's going to call my other function that should take me to that other page. And my other page is this guy add loyalty program activity. And then here is the XML for that. So back here in main activity, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this on button press because we deleted that button. So I'm going to clean this up. Get rid of this guy as well. So this is going to become more and more like what you should have for your project here. All right, so when I click on the Add Loyalty Program button, I am going to create an intent that's going to take me to the Add Loyalty Program class. All right, and then that should take me to that screen, and that is this guy right here. I'll just throw something out here and just say loyalty for right now so we can make sure we're getting there. So go ahead and hit play. All right, so I'll say add loyalty program. Here's that loyalty screen. All right, so we're going to build our loyalty screen similarly to how we built our credit card screen. That is, it has a submit button at the top and 4 text boxes for reading stuff in. So I'll go into my design here for loyalty program. I'll put my vertical linear layout in this guy. Then I'll go ahead and throw a button up top, and we'll make this button say submit, or say whatever you want. We're putting in 3 pieces of information, a name, a bank, and an integer balance. So we're going to take in plain text, and then a number. And I assume our number will always be 0 or more. So I could just choose number as that guy. So we'll go ahead and put the hint for this guy as name of program. And I'll change the ID for that to loyalty name ET. hint for this guy will be name of bank. And this will be loyalty bank name ET for edit text. And this last one is cur points. So we'll call this guy loyalty cur points ET. The hint will be current number of points. Okay, so those are going to be my inputs. So now I need to give myself programmatic access to these 3 edit texts and then write a function for the submit button to get called, or to call that actually creates the instance. So I'll go into add loyalty program activity main, this guy here. I'm going to give myself private edit text loyalty name ET, loyalty bank ET, and loyalty points ET. I'll go ahead and connect those up inside of onCreate. So this guy's the edit text version of this .find view by ID r.id loyalty name ET. This loyalty bank ET is equal to the edit text version of this find view by ID r.id loyalty bank ET. This loyalty points ET is equal to the edit text version of this find view by ID r.id loyalty cur points ET. All right, so now I have access to these 3 edit texts. Then I'll go ahead and create my public void on submit button pressed. All right, we're going to go ahead and read in from these 3 things. So I'm going to get 2 strings and an int, and it just so happens that that is what our loyalty program takes. We'll go ahead and read in whatever the int was for point balance, just in case they created a loyalty program that already had some, maybe they say Chase Ultimate Rewards, Chase Bank, and they put in 2,000 is the current number of points. So we'll go ahead and just read in whatever they put. So I'm going to say string program name is equal to this loyalty name ET get text toString. So I'm just putting them into variables just to be explicit here. So I'll read in from this edit text that string and store it in a variable here. Okay. Next, string bank name is equal to this loyalty bank ET get text toString. All right, and then the last one is I'm going to have an int cur points is going to be equal to integer.parseInt from this loyalty points ET get text toString. Okay, so this gives me the string version of the number of points that they typed in. This allows me to squeeze the integer out of that string. Everybody's cool with that?
If they don't type in anything.
Then it'll give you an error because you'll try to squeeze the int out of the empty string. So yeah, we're doing very little error checking. We're just assuming that the user never makes mistakes. So just like I've never made a syntax error programming, I've actually never messed up using a program either. That's even more impressive. Actually, the funny thing is I probably mess up using programs far more often than I mess up writing syntax. It's probably supposed to be the other way around, but
You're an old guy.
huh?
You're an old guy.
Is that, you think that's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, could be. So you're just old people mess up when they're using applications? That's like, oh. Well, this hand shakes a lot, so I think it might be, especially on laptops. Like I have bad tremors in my left hand, so I hit the keyboard, it dances around and stuff. Especially the Apple laptops, I have like the keypad thing is like the size of a dinner plate. You know, it's you have a Surface Book?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have that's the laptop. That's a Surface laptop, right?
No, this is a Surface Book 2.
Okay, yeah, so I have a Surface Pro, whatever the newest one is, 6 or something like that. So that was a step bigger than mine, I think. Yeah, so I'm always bumping into my own hands on that thing. But it's super convenient, like to travel with.
Yeah.
I use it for my Wi-Fi hotspot. So I sit at the wine bar on cruise ships with my phone sharing to that providing a Wi-Fi hotspot for this.
Yes.
And then I sell that Wi-Fi hotspot to the other people at the wine bar for free drinks.
There you go.
Travel hacking. Oh, if only that was not a completely true story. Actually, the part of that's not true. I didn't sell it, but I did provide them with free Wi-Fi. Okay, so now I've read in those 3 pieces of information, I'm going to go ahead and create a loyalty program here, and I'll just call display on it to spit it out to prove that it worked. So, where am I at here? So I'll go ahead and I'll say loyalty program LP is equal to a new loyalty program, and I'm going to pass it, what's the order? Is it name bank points? Name bank points. So I'll pass it program name, bank name, cur points, and then I'll say lp.display, just proving that I got it created acceptably. All right, so I've already named all my edit text in my design. In my, so remember we have our model view controller. So in our view, we've already named these guys. This guy is called the controller. So in the controller, I've given myself access to several of those views. But now I've also provided a function here that I need to go hook up to that submit button. So that's this dude here. Go to my submit button, click on click, and there's my on submit button pressed. So we'll go ahead and hit play here. I wonder where Shadi is. Let's text him. Why this is.
Watch him just forget we have
Well, I saw him earlier. He was mentioning it. I said, "Where are you? Bring coffee or diet soda or both." There. Might as well give him a task. Well, I really needed it too. Haven't you already seen I'm messing up with my keystrokes and stuff? This thing worked, didn't it? Did we test it? Loyalty program, Chase Ultimate Rewards, Chase 54. Submit. Yep, so there's my loyalty program there. All right. Oh, I learned how to do this last week, by the way. See that? You can see that way better, can't you? What's bad is I can now see that way better. It really has very little to do with the audience. I usually just assume my output is correct.
That's the best way to do it.
It's the best way to do it. Like, if you don't make errors, you don't have that problem. All right, so now I have the ability to create loyalty programs and create credit cards. And let's go ahead and add that last little piece here. So remember last time we talked about this idea of a singleton. And I told you not to use the built-in singletons. I mean, you can if you really want to, but if you go to File, New, notice here there is this dude called a singleton. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You can use that singleton. I just don't like the way it creates singletons. And you were doing some research on singletons where people were kind of saying avoid using it because you might create too many instances of the same singleton that are actually different core global variables. That'll never happen with the way I do it. So the way I create my singletons is this guy only exists once because he's filled up with a whole bunch of static variables. So each one of these variables is owned by the class itself. And so there is only one core.num students. There's only one core.the students, so on and so forth. Where if you used a traditional singleton, you would have a constructor in here that would return the instance of the singleton. And then that guy would then have access to all of these. Would no longer be static. They would be instance variables. Well, if you happen to create two instances of your singletons, now all of a sudden you don't have a single guy. You have two of them floating around that might have conflicts where you might think you might have the number of students in one and you might have an array of something else in another one, and you really needed them both in the same. That'll never happen doing it the way I'm doing it here, because you can't create an instance of this guy. He just is. Okay? So really, this is when I say this guy is a singleton, that's just a fancy way of saying a class filled with, let's just call it stuff. Accessible, that's not even spelled anywhere close, right? Access by everything.
That'll work.
It's a teacher tactic. When you don't know how to spell something, just make it definitely wrong. And then it's like a joke. All right, so this guy's just filled up with a whole bunch of variables. I made them public. That means it's literally available everywhere, but I could make these guys private if I only needed them internally. But this is my ability of having, for right now, having this giant global variable that I can access from any of my screens. Okay, nice little convenience thing. And I probably mentioned last time, but I'll mention it again right now with our singleton, because I saw it the last time here. One thing you'll often see in books, as well as maybe coming from older programmers who maybe haven't adapted, is this idea, and it'll be interesting to know if you think this way. Working with some older technologies, it's global variables are bad.
Oh yeah.
All right,
Actually, I
so
was thinking that. I didn't want to ask you. But
yeah. No. Always ask.
Yeah.
I'm a very much a realist, so I'll give you the
In the paradigm I coded, that's considered bad practice.
And generally, this would be. So, this idea of global variables being bad, this really came from kind of a procedural time period where your program would be this giant monolithic code, right, that had functions all over the place, 10,000 lines of code or whatever. And just to make things easy for you so you didn't have to pass things from one function to another function to another function, you just threw everything up in this global variable at the top and just said, there it is. Anybody who needs this guy can access it. And what ends up happening, and a similar thing can happen with singletons, is it's easy to abuse that. Because if, especially when you're operating as a beginning programmer, sometimes, let's call it all the time, you're pretty happy when something works, whether or not it works the right way. Now, or whether or not it's the best way to do it. And the thing is, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with something working that's not the best way of accomplishing it. What I'm not okay with is something works, but you don't know why it works. That's a problem, right? Because then you're just saying, okay, well, I've done every permutation of these 11 lines of code, and this one happens to work, so I'm going to stop touching. All right? And then you're in the situation where you have no idea why this actually works. Your last attempt is just as good as 7 attempts ago, right? But the reality is it works now probably for a reasonable reason, but the dangerous thing is you don't know what that reason is. All right, so it's super important that you understand code.
We prefix our global variables GV underscore. That way when you're reading through a 10,000 line code
Yeah,
package,
you know where you can find
you're
it.
like, oh, okay, this is a global.
Yeah.
That's where it's being manipulated. Because otherwise you get lost in the namespace. You're like, where
Sure.
did this come from?
Sure. Naming conventions are important. And you notice, I mean, I'm doing the same thing with our edit text. I always throw an ET at the end of it just to kind of give you an idea on what these things are. But I would disagree with this statement in general. The problem is not that global variables are bad. Sometimes global variables are necessary or they really make the solution to a specific problem far friendlier. The real issue is that global variables get abused. Once, kind of coming from this idea of being kind of a beginning programmer, or you stumbled upon something that works, all of a sudden, like, oh, this works. I've now discovered that if I put my variables up there, they always work. You have no idea why putting them up top there, making them global, makes them work, but now everything just works. So then you get to this program that has 10,000 lines of code in it, and you got 50 variables at the top that some of them only belong to a single function. Yet it's sitting there at the top because that's the way that you figured out it would work for you. That makes sense? Global variables used appropriately are just fine. You got to be careful not to abuse it. Same thing's true with a singleton. Kind of with great power comes great responsibility, that type of thing. So singletons are great. Just don't throw every variable under the sun into your singleton. Because then all of a sudden you're going to have a really, really, really messy singleton. And then you'll have to start naming convention your variables in there to know who belongs to who. All right. So I'll preface this and say, disagree, and I think generally this isn't viewed in the same way anymore. Abuse of global variables is bad. That's the real problem. And really a singleton is like a modern day global variable, but it's global to the entire application and how we're using it. So that makes it super convenient for getting things between screens.
So in Java, when you're using singletons, will you ever code it in such, I'm just curious, will people ever code it in such a way so you have a specific class whose job is to actually interact with the singleton class? So instead of a bunch of different classes interacting with it, you'd actually have a package or something you could call that's job was to interface with the singleton.
I mean, it'd be reasonable. I mean, the one thing I'd back you away from is thinking about that in terms of Java. Any object-oriented language. Replace Java with C#, Swift,
Okay, sure.
Objective-C, whatever. Because singleton, this is not a Java thing. Singleton is an object-oriented programming thing. In fact, you could even make an argument that you could do it in a procedural situation with like static structs, but it's fair to say it's really an object-oriented programming language thing. In fact, most of the things we talk about have very little to do with Java. We just happen to be using Java because we happen to be using Android. And that just is the language that you use for that. A lot of these things have equivalents in other languages. Singleton's just an idea. This guy, did I talk about design patterns? Do we have a slide for that somewhere in here? I'll just put it right before the singleton thing. Oh yeah, I'm sure we do up top from MVC. I introduced the idea of a design pattern. Yeah, so design pattern is just a generic, this is a design pattern, this is a proposed good idea or good solution to a common idea. Okay, common problem, something like that. Singleton is a design pattern. Says, hey, you need to share some crap between multiple screens, throw it up there. Makes sense.
Yeah,
Right?
I was able to get my singleton working, so like that wasn't the issue for me with the homework. It was actually manipulating the list views.
Yeah.
So I gave you no screenshot because I couldn't make mine work.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I gave you a sad face, but
Yeah, we'll get it working. But I figured I'd go on top of you saying that you really looked into singleton, so I'd add some commentary
no,
there.
This is pretty cool. They said that like in Android that there's a library. I can't remember what it's called, but they're like use this instead of making your own singletons. And can't remember what the reason was. You know, in Stack Overflow, people get extraordinarily opinionated. So
Oh, yeah.
And it was for the reasons aforementioned. They're like, well, you can end up instantiating two singletons, and you have no clue why, and it's really easy to
Yeah,
do.
that would actually be pretty difficult. No. Go up a slide. You could open the slides on your computer right now. Here.
I tried that. I can't actually get it to open.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't.
Are you lying?
I haven't tried this semester, but usually I can.
I haven't tried in the last many months.
Let's quote it the night. I tried this year, but anyway.
All right.
Last year.
Okay, if it doesn't work,
This is the one you want to see?
yes. Because I was asked that in an interview. I'll let them.
All right. So what was I doing? Oh, we're at it. So just like I did here with my add credit card dealy, flippy dealy, here at the very end, after I displayed it, I went ahead and threw it into core. Okay, so I'm going to do that here. So right now, core has a number of students, and then I have an array of, actually, I'm just storing a single credit card. So this is where I pulled you up a little short, right? Okay, so since I'm no longer doing student stuff, let me just dump all this. I'll streamline my core for your guys' assignment. I'll go ahead and just bring this up to date for my other thing. What's this thing called? Loyalty program? That does not start with an S. Loyalty program. We'll start this guy off at null. And then inside here, after we've created it, we'll say core.cur loyalty program is equal to LP. All right, so now after we've gone to our screen that sets up those, that reads in our loyalty programs or reads in our credit cards, creates it, and then adds it to the top to our core, we ultimately want those guys to show up in a list view over in main, right? Let me go ahead and just show you one more thing here, because right now the way it would work is after you're done adding something here, you'd have to hit the back arrow to go back to the previous screen. I'll show you the code that you can put in. So activities know how to end on their own. So after I've set that guy, I can say this dot finish.
What? Is that the way that Emma told us to do it though?
Who, what?
Do you remember when Emma was telling us last semester that there was like a right way to do it? Is that the way that she told us to do it?
Yeah, this is the right way. Yeah.
I just wanted to.
So I tried that, and on mine, it went back, like to the other page, but it didn't submit the information when it did. So I had to write it a different way.
Okay, well, you just need to make sure that this stuff happens before you say finish.
Yeah.
The order of the code. I have to see it. But, I mean, all this stuff will...
No, 'cause I found a different
Okay.
way to do it.
Yeah, all this stuff will occur. The other thing that you can do is you can call, and this is what Maddie was referring to, is you can call this dot on back pressed. You can actually call the function that is the exact same function that gets called when I actually hit this back button. When I hit the back button on activity, it calls the activities on back pressed function. Let's see if Shadi replied. Oh, they're having problems in the hall. Both coffee and diet soda. All right. I might as well benefit from his tardiness, right?
Did you
One,
say
two,
for
please.
all?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Huh?
can I have some as
Did you
well?
say for all?
Oh, anybody else have orders you want to put in? What other orders you want? I'm very, I only think about myself like 99 and 100% of the time.
And John really will get it, 'cause he's got points and swipes as well.
Oh, no, I expect him to get it. I'm not questioning what, oh, for everyone else, yeah. So I guess post on Slack anything you want, but I put my order in. Really, that's all I care about.
Tim wants a Gatorade.
Are you passing the test?
I don't know.
You can have your Gatorade after I see the test.
Oh, great.
Or you can message Shadi and see what he'll bring in. Maybe he'll take.
He's not in that group thing though.
Well, he's on Slack. He can send a direct message to the guy.
Facebook message, yeah.
All right. All right, everybody shut up.
Sweet.
Shut up.
I'm coding.
Pastor Smith said that that's a naughty word.
When?
He's not
At
that
chapel
specific.
today,
Like Bible study?
when you weren't paying attention.
I was paying attention. I remember he said, oh, we usually don't say that, but he still said it, didn't he?
Not in the mean context.
No, but I say it in a mean context. I mean it. All right. So, anyways, when I say this dot, whenever I say this in here, this keyword refers to an instance of the object in which we're currently in. So this is the instance of add loyalty program activity that's currently running. So when I say this dot on back pressed, I'm telling this current add loyalty program activity, call your on back pressed function. And that's the same function that gets called when I hit this little back button here. That's the default function. And the default thing in there is it calls this dot finish. Okay, so it's not that there's a right or wrong thing to do here. It's inside of this dot on back pressed, it calls this dot finish. That's what it actually does. If you want to do more than just finish, what you would do is you would override the on back button pressed. And you can then write your own version of that with a final line of this dot finish if you wanted to. You know, maybe you want to have anything that's on the screen get saved. Something like that. Here, I'll actually just show that to you real quick. So I'm going to say public void on, actually let me do it this way. On back pressed. I'll press enter there. Notice it wants to override it. And then what I'm going to do there is I'm actually going to do all the stuff that I'm currently doing on my submit button. I'll just post that in there. Okay. Who, what?
So you're saying when you click the back button, that's what happened?
When you click the back button, it calls the default on back pressed.
There you go.
Oh, perfect. I have options.
So it's not gonna.
Just creamer in this?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so? You don't even know what you.
Cappuccino.
Oh, I got you. What were you asking?
So you're giving them an option. Do you still have to run this step finish if you're clicking the on back press button?
Well, I'm overriding it. So if I don't say this, let me just show this to you. So I'm not going to say finish now. So I'm going to go in here, I'll hit play, and I put this in loyalty program, right? And I'll make sure I put some stuff in there, otherwise we'll get that convert an integer that's nothing into something. Oh, it's looking for some of my other things here. I deleted all those from core. Just nothing to see here, just relax. All right, so I'll add a loyalty program. I'll just bang on the keys a little bit. We'll do 34. Now when I hit the back button here, it's gonna do, well, it'll do all this stuff. It'll actually do it, including display it. Okay, so make sure I have logcat spit out here. Hit the back button. It displayed it, right? It did all that logic, but it didn't go back because I never put.
Oh, because you're overwriting it.
Yeah, I'm writing my own version of this dude. Yeah. So I've said, look, I don't like what you used to do. I'm going to do my own thing here, and my thing now doesn't actually have you finish. Okay? But now it'll finish.
That's interesting though, because like use it as a workaround.
Yeah, and that, again, that's not a Java thing. And that's not a Android thing. That's an object-oriented programming thing.
I just think that's interesting.
So I'll go here, we'll type some stuff in again, and now I'll do it again. It'll print something, but it'll also go back. Make sense? Okay, because I overrode what the on back pressed function does for an activity. I wrote my own version of that. Now that might not make sense for us, right? In fact, this is more just for a kind of a show. All right, so if we don't want to do that, after I hit my submit button and after I create it, I'll just tell the activity to go ahead and finish, and it will take me back to the previous screen. Or I can similarly say this dot on back pressed, which calls the function that I have not overridden at this point, which just goes back to the previous screen. All right, so this dot finish tells an activity to end. Go ahead.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So the when you click the submit button now, we're only creating a single instance of the loyalty program, right?
For right now.
If we went back into it, we would overwrite whatever.
Correct. Yeah, we're what he's talking about here is every single time I go to my loyalty program or my credit card thing here, I'm overriding the one loyalty program or one credit card I'm currently storing inside of Core. We'll be updating that shortly, but that's what I'm currently doing. Okay. So far, so good? All right. And let's just assume we tested this exhaustively. I'm sure it works. All right, so now we want to have a collection of credit cards and a collection of loyalty programs, right? So we want to have those guys up here. Now I'm gonna still do this the ghetto way for right now, which is the way I probably expected you to do it. I think somebody had posted, was it Maddie, you posted about linked lists?
Yeah.
So linked lists are gonna be the better way of doing this. So if you did it with linked lists or array lists, whatever, that's fine. But I'm gonna do it with arrays first to kind of show you the weakness of that. Then we'll upgrade it to linked lists hour 2 or something today. Okay.
That allows us to pop them onto the stack, so we dynamically.
Well, we can do it with a stack, but I don't think a stack is necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, using a linked list, does that allow us for dynamic sized arrays? Because with
Yeah,
the
that's what a
array-
linked list is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've had a C++ class of that.
Yeah.
So.
But the good news for us is before we're allowed to use the built-in linked list class, we'll have to write our own. I mean, why use something that's built in when you have the opportunity to write your own version of that?
Of course.
I mean, we're all here to become better programmers, right?
Everyone has stacked throughout your classes.
Well, that's why we're starting from scratch here.
So we can all write on back button press and never finish.
Yeah, well, if you really wanted to. This is going to be all of your kung fu.
You gotta get to the database stuff today.
I'm going to. We got 4 hours.
Not any-
5 or 6 if I keep trucking.
I could use that coffee, John.
Here, here, you want it? You could have it. I only took one little sip.
No, nothing.
It might have sugar in it. I'm probably
I got tea
not
back.
supposed to have the
Guess I'll
sugar.
go get tea in a little bit.
All right, but I'm gonna drink the sodas. I like sodas. What was I doing? Oh, go up to core here. All right, so right now I'm just storing an individual, as you pointed out, an individual credit card or an individual loyalty program. Probably not what I want to do. I want to store full-blown collections of credit cards and collections of loyalty programs. And for right now, the way we know how to do collections is through an array. Okay? So we're going to say public static, what do I call it, credit card? Credit card array. We'll call this guy the credit cards. And this guy will be a new credit card array of size, we'll just say 1,000. Similarly, we'll say public static, what is it called, loyalty program? Array, the loyalty programs is equal to a new loyalty program of size 1,000. All right. Now, unfortunately, as it currently stands, because I haven't shown you how to do custom array adapters yet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So as it currently stands, we actually only know how to show strings, correct? So I'm going to have a string version of each of these guys. So I'll have a public static, let's call this is a string array called the loyalty program strings. And this would be a new string array of size 1,000. And then public static string array, the credit card strings is a new string array 1,000. All right, so now I need to be able to keep track of how many actual credit cards I have and how many actual loyalty programs I have, because I have this giant container capable of holding 1,000 of them, but right now I don't have any in there. Okay, so I'm going to have a couple of counters. So I'll have a public static int credit card count. Then I'll have a public static int loyalty program count. That'll start off at 0. All right, now we could do this, when I go and create a new loyalty program or a credit card, so here's add credit card activity. Notice this guy's an error now because I took that away. What we would do is we would say something like core dot the credit cards at bucket core dot credit card count is equal to CC. So I'll store the credit card I just built inside of this collection of credit cards at this position, initially bucket 0. Similarly, I need the string version of that, so I need to go and teach my credit cards how to give myself a string version of themselves. So I'm going to actually take this string that I'm doing in here for display. I'm going to steal that. And I'm going to create a public string toString. I'll just return that guy. So a string representation of a credit card will return the string that looks identical to what our display is currently spitting out. All right. Similarly, I'll do that for our loyalty program. So I'll steal this string from display. I'll create a function here, public string toString. This guy will return that. Okay, now I didn't have to call this toString. There's just a double benefit of calling it toString because now I can print out these guys using system.out.println. Don't worry about that right now, but this is a function that happens to return a string representation of a credit card or a loyalty program. You could call it elephant if you wanted to call it elephant. Okay, but I've decided that this is what a loyalty program looks like. Okay. So after I have added my credit card, so I will set the credit cards at bucket credit card count equal to the card I created. Then I'll say core dot the credit card string. I probably meant for that to be called strings with an S. Let me just update that real quick. At bucket core dot credit card count is equal to cc.toString. So this is the string version of this credit card. And I'm storing it in this collection of strings. That makes sense? Similarly, I would then say core dot credit card count plus plus. So that the next time I go to put a new credit card in, it'll put it at bucket 1, then at bucket 2, then at bucket 3, then at bucket 4, so on and so forth. All right, that makes sense? Now I'm going to actually show you an encapsulation way of doing this when we do loyalty cards in a second. Then we'll come back and fix this one. So this is accurate. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just several steps, right? To add my credit card to core, I'm setting my global credit cards array at a certain position equal to CC. Then I'm setting my global strings array at a certain position equal to the string version of CC. Then I'm incrementing that certain position. I'm doing that all out here in public. Okay, just lots of lines of code that are happening right here. And any place else in the program where I might add a credit card would have to have these same lines of code. So let's go do this over on the loyalty side of things. All right, so I have my new loyalty program, so I'm going to say core dot the loyalty programs at bucket core dot loyalty program count is equal to LP. Core dot the loyalty program strings at bucket core dot loyalty program count is equal to LP dot toString. And then core dot loyalty program count plus plus. So those are the three things that have to happen in order for us to add a loyalty program. right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to steal these 3 lines of code. I'm going to go into core here, and I'm going to create a function. Public static void add loyalty program. And this guy will take a loyalty program LP, and he'll do those lines of code in there, so that out here, I'll just say core.add loyalty program LP.
Is that another object-oriented thing?
I guess.
It's just good programming.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is an object-oriented thing from the perspective of.
Cable cars wrong.
Yeah, it is an object-oriented thing from the perspective of we're dancing between classes. So this concept here would be called encapsulation, where we are taking the details of these 3 things here. Where's core?
Anytime you can repeat yourself, so like if you were going to do this in multiple spots, like if you could do this in multiple classes with those 3 lines of code, the cardinal rule is do not repeat yourself. So that means write a procedure to do that, so you repeat the procedure.
Right, but why not repeat yourself? Why is it bad to repeat yourself?
Well, you might introduce an error in one of the instances where you repeat yourself, and 2, it makes your code, this is personal, just makes your code less readable. It bloats your code, so yeah, you end up with less code.
Well, I think the main crux is right now adding a loyalty program means do these 3 things.
Yeah, you control it right here.
Yeah.
So if you decide to change the method, you're gonna have to change it in X number of instances. Whereas here you only change it in 1.
Right. So if I decide that adding a loyalty program actually requires 6 steps for something, I'll have to go and replace the 3 lines of code with 6 lines of code in 20 places throughout my program.
It's really hard to
As opposed to having everything this is called encapsulating. We've encapsulated.
Sorry, that came out
Which, by
strong.
the way, encapsulation is an object-oriented programming feature.
Yeah. Encapsulation would be
Yes.
encapsulation would be an object-oriented
It's
programming
one of the
feature.
4 main parts of being object-oriented.
Right, but I would still say that this concept here existed prior to this through procedural like functions. You know, you would have said, hey, here's some stuff that I'm going to need to do 10 different times. I'm going to put it in a single function and then call it 10 times. So kind of the same thing. Yeah.
Good question. So first off, by throwing this in core, don't we need to change all the core dot whatevers to be this dot, or?
Nope.
All right.
You get to tell me why now. First of all, no red squiggly, so it seems to be happy about it. It's a good question. It's a good question.
I think it's related to my second question then. Why don't we encapsulate this inside add credit card? Because what's happening is this is all this code is being thrown into add credit card, right? When it's running down, that's why it's not red squiggly.
Well, I mean, potentially, but we might say we're going to put it here in add loyalty program or the equivalent in add credit card. But maybe that's not the only places in the entire application where we might add a loyalty program. Maybe there's some other screen somewhere where on a, we can like click a quick add of a loyalty program rather than having to go through the normal form. So we might actually have multiple places in our application where we perform the same logic. Okay. But at the heart of his original question, his question was why do I say core dot here instead of this dot? Okay. It actually has to do with something called let's get this into the notes. We have this idea of something called a context. We have a static context, and we have a non-static context. Okay. Now, in real life, when somebody says, "Well, that was taken out of context," what we're really saying is that was taken out of kind of the chapter or the collection of information that was actually going on when somebody said something. Okay, so when I say the context is a static context, what I'm talking about here is if we treat this as a conversation or a book or a room or something like that, because this function itself is a static function, everything inside of here is happening in a static context. All right? Now, The real thing here is that I actually don't need to say core dot. I can actually just say those things. Because core dot is implied because I am in a static context inside of the class called core. Therefore, I have direct access to all of the static members of core from within a static context. Now, I would always still write core dot for no other reason than probably spelling, so I don't misspell it. It's not incorrect, but this core dot is assumed to be here. Now, if I try to type this dot here, notice it's screaming at me about this. It says, cannot be referenced from a static context. This is how an instance of a variable refers to itself from within itself. I'm in a static context, not a non-static context, or maybe we can call this an instance context. It's not called an instance context, but that kind of makes sense. So only in non-static context does this keyword even exist. That make sense? All right. All right, and all of those things are definitely object-oriented concepts. All right, so what I've done here is I've encapsulated this logic into a single function just in case I ever change it at a later point in time, but also in case I have multiple places in my program that I might be adding loyalty programs. Similarly, I'll do this for my credit cards. I'll steal these 3 lines of code. I'll go into core. I'll write public static void add credit card, and this is going to take a credit card CC and do that stuff. So then inside of add credit card, I would just say core.add credit card CC. Same exact syntax is happening. I've just hidden it or encapsulated it inside of a function in core.
So the core being singleton really is like just to hide all your functions in a way that you can access from really anywhere. But also
From anywhere is the important part. I mean, we happen to be putting, you know, a singleton we would say is a place that you can store stuff that needs to be shared among multiple screens in our Android app or multiple parts of our multiple objects in a program, something like that. But we happen to be using it to kind of give us global access to some stuff to share things between multiple screens. It's not the only way to get things between multiple screens, but it's a pretty convenient way as long as we don't abuse the singleton to just start putting everything there.
okay. Well, I was gonna say, is there like another thing, like the singleton you said, like you could store values into like core.
Yeah.
Also, you have like functions, so do you have like a separate class used for functions?
You could. I mean, you could decide to be kind of organized with your singletons. You could have singletons for doing certain kinds of things. I mean, not even just functions versus variables. You could have certain variables and certain functions that kind of belong to a certain concept in one singleton. And you might have another singleton where it's, maybe you have all the stuff that are for administrator privileges in one place. And then you have normal user stuff in a different singleton just to keep those guys kind of separated.
Okay.
And then you can even play around with inheritance for that as well to I guess, make it organized, make it look organized. Okay, so understand that I haven't done anything magical here other than just put my 3 lines of code inside of a function in core, and then I just call that function. Make sense? That's all I've done there. Okay, now I'm going to go to, so we're supposed to have 2 list views in main. Okay, so let me go to my activity main here, and I already have that, so I'm just going to create new ones. All right, so here are these 2 guys. That's my vertical linear layout, and now I'm going to put a legacy list view, and then I'll put another legacy very unhappy. Oh, I thought I was adding a grid layout. I'll put another list view here, but I'm going to put it. Give me a moment. So just put my list view inside of a list view. I want them both there. All right, so they're both out here now. Let me give them a different name. So we're going to call this guy a credit card list view, and we'll call this guy a loyalty program list view. All right, and they seem to want to take over the whole screen. Can I drag one of them up? All right, so we'll just give that guy 200 size. All right, so I got two different dudes out on the screen here. One's called credit card list view. The other one is called loyalty program list view. Go into main here. Where's my main? Give myself access to those guys. So this is going to be credit card list view, and oh, I didn't spell that right. And loyalty program list view. And let's call this the CC adapter and the LP adapter, because we're going to need two separate adapters for our two separate list views. Okay, so then I'll go ahead and grab access to my two list views. So I'll say this dot credit card list view is equal to the list view version of this dot find view by ID, r dot ID dot credit card list view. And then this dot loyalty program list view is equal to the list view version of this dot find view by ID, r dot ID dot layout loyalty. How do you spell that? Loyal. That guy. Okay. Now I'm going to need to give myself, I actually can use my same list view row for both of these. I already have, you know, our ghetto list view row that only knows how to show a string, so I can just use that same dude for both of those guys. So I'll go ahead and initialize my, where's main? There we go. So I'll say this dot CC adapter is equal to a new array adapter, passing it this context, passing it r dot ID dot, actually no, it's not ID, it's r dot layout dot student list view row, and then the list for this guy, which is core dot credit card strings. Similarly, I'll say this dot was it LP adapter is equal to new array adapter. This r dot layout dot student list view row, and then core dot loyalty program strings. All right, and then we'll say this dot credit card list view dot set adapter to this dot CC adapter. this dot loyalty program list view dot set adapter is equal to this dot LP adapter. Get rid of this crap. All right, so now as of right now, this will crash because my array of strings is currently filled with nothing. So I actually need to go through and initialize my 2 array of strings real quick with just a bunch of empty strings or n/a's. Go ahead.
So mine never worked, but my thought was just to take a look at the index value and the core for each one and only initialize after that made it past 0.
Well, you can do that, and we're actually going to I'm going to show you a fix for that after we take our first break, because I'm going to show you how to make a custom array adapter, which will solve the initial problem. But right now, we're stuck with just using the default built-in array adapter that just says, hey, you gave me an array of 1,000 things. That's how many things I'm going to try to show. So you're going to have to give it 1,000 strings, even though
do they have to be filled up? Do they have to? They can't be sparse.
Not for the default one.
So that's why my thing
Yeah,
is
if you write your own array adapter, it can be.
I got why my thing's busted.
Yeah. So.
Because I never filled it up. So Maddie, do you fill yours up all the way? She must fill hers up all the way.
So what I'll do here real quick is I'm just going to write a quick little for loop for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 1,000, I plus plus, and we'll just go through and we'll say core dot loyalty program strings, that bucket I is equal to, I just pick your favorite string.
So Dr. Lemon, question.
Mm-hmm.
So mine always dumps out on me because I try to get smart with my if statement and say, okay, like, you know, but since it's a sparse array and not a full array, that's why it would fail using the default adapter. I always get a Java null, null object error
Yeah.
when I try to like initialize the array adapter, and that's because like say my arrays are only 2 because you said go small, so I only put like 1 element in it.
Yeah.
But because there's an empty element, that's why it throws the error on me.
Yep.
Oh. I should
Yeah.
listen to your lecture better.
So actually, I think at the end of class, didn't I say hint, hint, you're going to have to fill this?
I did believe you.
Oh. That's just stupid.
Yeah, I'm an idiot.
Because I've been doing this for a few minutes, you know.
I know how the job is. Come on.
All right, so I just went through and I threw a bunch of strings in my arrays.
Procedural programming for 8 years. I'm great.
And then I went ahead and I hooked everything up, set these adapters up, and now when I go and I add a new credit card or a new loyalty program, I'll overwrite that specific bucket of my string with something that actually looks like a credit card or a loyalty program, so the thing will fix. Now, I'm going to go ahead and run it for right now. I know that there is a thing for array adapters that allows you to have it detect updates, but it actually should work without using that. But it works on the system clock, so there might sometimes be delays. And I'll kind of show you that here as we do this. But right now we should have a whole bunch of n/a's, I would think. So there's my first one there. There's my second one there. I'll go ahead and actually I think I'll be able to show you the thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a credit card. I'm just going to, that doesn't even matter. Minimum spend, bonus points, 30,000. I'll hit submit. Okay, I didn't write the finish on this one, so I'll go back. All right, so nothing updated here, right? And which one was first, credit cards or loyalty? So you see when I scrolled, it then updated. Okay, it forced it to update then. What you can do, and this is what Maddie posted on Slack, is there's a function where you can tell an array adapter to check for updates, to update itself. Okay. Now, if you want to, you could do this a couple different ways. Let me show you. Let me show you the quick and dirty way of doing this. So I'm actually going to take my 2. I'll go to main, and I'll take my 2 array adapters. Ruh-roh. I don't know where that guy was going. I'm going to take my 2 array adapters. I'm going to actually remove them from main. I'm going to throw it up here in core. I'll make this public. I'll make this static. All right, so I have those 2 guys there. Now I'll set them here. That way I have access to those. Actually, I wanted the array adapters, not the list views, even though I realize I grabbed the list views. Because it's the array adapter you tell to get notified when there's an update. Go ahead.
So each list view needs an array adapter?
Yep. Because it's adapting an array for that list view. So one of ours is an array of credit card stuff. The other one's an array of loyalty stuff. All right, so I'm just putting this up here global so I have access to it in all of my places. Okay. Then in main activity, when I go to read those guys in, it's going to be core.cc adapter and core.lp adapter. Because that's where they live now. I've moved them up to the singleton. That make sense? So now what I can do is inside of my add loyalty program thingy, after the submit button, when I click finish, I can go ahead and actually I can do, the better place to do it would be in core. So let me just update my add credit card real quick because that guy's not hitting finish. So I'll say this dot finish in here. Now inside of core here, after I add a loyalty program, I'll go ahead and say core.lpadapter.notify dataset changed. That will let him know, let that array adapter know that the data set that he's adapting for that list view has changed, so he needs to redisplay himself. Make sense? Similarly, I'll do it in here for the add credit card. So core.cc adapter.notify dataset changed. All right, so by making those array adapters global, now when something happens on one of the other screens, when I add a new credit card, through these functions, it'll go ahead and tell that array adapter something has updated in your data set. You need to make your list view reset to show the changes. So I'll go ahead and run this.
So essentially it's adding another element to the array as...
Well, I am adding another element to the array right here, right?
Right, you're doing that, but then you're increasing the size of it?
No, size is the same. It's 1,000. I mean, so everything I was doing before is the same. This is saying I'm going to add a new loyalty program. I'm going to add a new string representation of that loyalty program. I'm just going to increase my count for keeping track of how many actual loyalty programs I have, because I actually have a big giant bucket that can hold 1,000 of them, but I only have 3 right now. But at the end of the day, this adapter is based on this string array. That's what that adapter adapts for the list view. After I've added something to this string array here, when I tell the adapter that his data set's changed, he's going to go and read from this string array again and update the list view to show the new element. Where just a few minutes ago you saw me, I had to scroll it off the screen, then back onto the screen, and then you saw the change happen. Okay, so this will make it automatically happen by the time we get back to the first screen. So I'll add a credit card. Submit, already updated here. Add a loyalty program. Submit, already updated here. Add another credit card. It's a really crappy sign-up bonus, don't do that. All right, see there's that other credit card there. This other guy still has the 1 value in it. Add another loyalty program. Make sense? All right. Questions? That's the homework, right? Does it do everything the homework is supposed to do? Well, it does everything the homework is supposed to do. I just kind of showed you some interesting ways of moving some stuff around. I don't think I do anything extra. All right, so questions, comments, concerns about that before we take a break and then come back and do some more cool stuff? All right, so let me go ahead and check this into.
So you actually helped me. I just didn't know about arrays having to be full up front, so I didn't fill up my arrays before.
I didn't do it either. 'Cause I went later in the link she said. I just filled it up as that.
Yeah, I'd always get an error whenever I'd set up the adapter, and so the reason was what you told me actually worked, and would work if I fixed my code. So you did say, I knew it was right. I just couldn't figure out what was I couldn't figure out what I was writing